My name is Matthew Shanley. I'm here in Chicago, Illinois. My background is actually not in hospitality or even real estate. I, out of school, was a software engineer, and we did basically a lot of consulting work for big higher education in healthcare institutions. What we were doing is basically overhauling their systems and bringing it onto a single ERP, single HCM. So basically taking all these shadow systems, consolidating it into one very clear, concise, and hopefully easier to use system where you get real-time reporting, streamline your business processes, etc. So that was probably 4 to 5 years of my career. And then COVID happened. I was on the road a lot. Then I was not on the road. And I was living in Chicago and wanted to find a place to stay. And it just worked out in a very weird way where I moved into a brand new apartment style hotel. Ended up being, the neighborhood hotel's first location. Thought there was a gap in the marketplace for apartment style hotels, where you've got everything good about a hotel that we know we like, which is reliability. Like a bit, think of a business traveler, right? You go to the same spot every time. You want to make sure it's clean. Your check-in process is easy. It's professionally managed. Communications are clear. But it's a little stale. And what we saw coming was Airbnb, right? This very new type of travel, or at least at scale, right? I think it always existed, but they kind of helped institutionalize it and normalize it. And what did people like about that? Or it's a little bit more interesting space, more space. You usually have a living room, maybe multiple bedrooms, kitchen, laundry machines, so you can cook for yourself. You can actually leave with clean laundry. It's better for longer stays, but you don't know who the host is. It's kind of this blind process. Yes, they may be a super host or something like that, but you can't guarantee, that it's going to be professionally managed, professionally cleaned. You could show up, not have your access codes, all of that. So, the idea was to marry those two things of professional management with a little bit more interest in the units, more space. So that kind of is how we launched this apartment style brand, which is now the neighborhood hotel. So most of our buildings are pretty historic. Some were just old 1890 apartment buildings. Most recently, we converted a museum. We're working on an old bank conversion. So kind of looking for opportunities in the marketplace where we can deliver on our real estate and construction expertise, and then partner that with what we're growing as the neighborhood hotel brand. So once that building is finished, we turn it over to our ops team, and that's where all the magic happens. And it's been a really nice story to follow. So yeah, our first hotel was Lincoln Park in 2020. Since then, we added 2 locations in Southwest Michigan in the New Buffalo area. And we earlier, kind of the end of last year, but really fully the beginning of this year, opened our 4th location back in Chicago in Little Italy. So the 4 operating hotels, it's 72 units across the 4. And, we were we're working on that bank project. That's going to be our biggest building, another 76. One really nice thing is these are apartment style hotels, right? So if another global pandemic happens, we can always turn back to 12-month leases. So that was a really interesting one to say, okay, we can get some 6-month, 12-month leases in here, and that can just kind of save us, right? So that was awesome. But 2, then the first thing to come back was leisure travel. And businesses, I think, were still unsure about sending out their employees. It was just kind of weird for, 18 months, maybe 2 years. And then business travel started to pick up a little bit. But our most recent location, which is our biggest, 35 units in Little Italy, is kind of anchored between this medical district and then University of Illinois Chicago, which is a big university. So these 2 things are bringing in a totally different type of customer than we see in Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park is a lot of leisure still, because we ask questions throughout the stay to try and get some marketing data around it. So it definitely is business in Lincoln Park, but not like in Little Italy. Little Italy, we're seeing, I think, over 40% are from business or medical stay. And then most is leisure. There's like different buckets within those, like group travel too. But that is definitely something we see. And yes, it is mostly weekday where you're seeing business, but to your point, there are a significant amount of people who are coming Monday through Thursday, and then they'll extend, Friday, Saturday, even Sunday to go back home, which is like the ideal guest, right? Because our focus now, like I said, over 70% at both Chicago locations, Lincoln Park around 75%, continuing to climb every day. Now we really want to focus on length of stay. So how do we get people to stay for 5, 6, 7 nights? I think right now we're hovering around 4 nights, which is still pretty strong. But everything gets a little bit better, in terms of less turns, right? So your cleaning costs go down. It's less operationally intensive to deal with check-ins and check-outs. So we really want to figure out how to get the length of stay to grow. And I think one of the ways to do that is by playing into this business leisure segment of, if you're here Monday to Thursday, kind of picking up on those guests and even being able to, incentivize them with a discount. If you extend the weekend, you can get a couple 15-20% off for that weekend. Just trying to get them to stay a little longer, because also what we're seeing in the business segment is a lot of repeat customers. Sure, it's first of all, there are definitely tools in place that help, and as you get smarter at the tools, you rely on them more. That all helps. But I think just kind of again at a macro level, the biggest thing we deal with is seasonality, just where we are in Chicago, first of all, but even more so in Southwest Michigan, because those are more vacation. So it's like you said, the highs are high and the lows are low. So when it's, June, July, August, across the portfolio, it's all thumbs up, everything's good. We're entering a slow period. December helps with the holidays. January again gets some kind of holiday, but it really in February, March it slows, and that's where rates start to drop. And the interesting thing is, I also wear the hat of being director of operations, and that's a really interesting intersection, because as rates continue to drop, honestly, the quality of guests can also drop a little bit, and then it becomes kind of a push and pull where it's like, what are we willing to sell rooms for, right? Like, are we willing to do it with like such a slim margin because we need that occupancy, we need a little bit of cash flow, but is that really hurting us long term because of the wear and tear on the units where we're turning them over every day? So it's a really interesting push and pull in the winter months. So I think that is kind of the biggest struggle we deal with is, looking at February, if we don't have a baseline occupancy, we know we're going to be cutting rates like the weeks up into it, the days up into it, just to try and get people in there. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is trying to fend off, seasonality that comes and goes. And then once, April hits, you start to feel good again. And summer is going to crush in both our markets. It's funny because I joined full time, I think in 21, and the PriceLabs tool was already in place. And I think that across the board has been the only tech that has really stayed the same. When I came in, we had to overhaul our property management system. So that was a whole process. Since then, our tech stack has totally changed in terms of guest comms, smart lock systems, you name it. But PriceLabs has kind of been the consistent one that I think we've kind of grown alongside, which has been really nice. Strong support team. So we actually used the tool when I started, where I think the value has come has been either the relationships I have with people like Aviva who point out tips, or the materials you put out to help clients learn the tool. And I think just how we've learned to use it. So one thing, like when we launched the brand, our minimums, we were never really allowing ourselves to do less than 2 nights. And I think that really prevented some occupancy, right? But again, it was because we were worried about the buildings and everything like that. So now we're able to kind of surge that pricing and do different things to offset it. The number one tool, I think, for our business, which is unique, apartment style, not traditional, vacation, very seasonal in some areas, is like the minimum night. All the rules that you allow us to set with that. Because again, when we were a little more, at least I was a little more naive to revenue management, it would be like, all right, it's summer, we're going to do 5-night minimum on weekends. And it didn't work, right? We were just losing occupancy. People are searching, they can't find their days. And again, kind of like learning from whatever you're putting out there or our experts. No, we don't need that 5 nights. Like now we have operational history. We can do it for 3 or 4 at a really high rate on those weekends. Then we can discount during the week, continue to fill it. So that it's been not necessarily like I came in, was interviewing all these different revenue management softwares and decided PriceLab, like it was already in place. I will say since then, again, just to kind of test the market, we have interviewed other places to see what's out there. Are they more competitive on price? Do they have features we don't know about? And I really haven't found one that's worth really pursuing. And I think one of the biggest gaps is some of that minimum night stuff, because they might be set up more for hotels who don't really care. It's always 1 night minimum, so they don't have to have like a robust logic behind it. They don't know if it's like 3-night minimums back to back to automatically drop the orphan day. Like orphan day was a concept I brought up, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. They hadn't really thought of that. But I think since you we're focused a lot on vacation rentals and hotels, like you understand both worlds, and that is exactly where we sit. So it's just been a really nice tool for us. And I mean, yeah, I have some stats that we can look at that just show, how much we've increased in occupancy without sacrificing too much ADR. So yeah, it's been, and I'm always learning. Like I look at what you guys publish and new features here or there, making little tweaks. But I do think after years of using it, there is a level of trust that I feel within the system, which is extremely important. Kind of depends on the market. So for Michigan, for example, there's not a ton of hotels in the area we are. There's like 2 or 3 major ones that we definitely track in a comp set, but that one we actually lean more so on vacation rentals, because we have a decent amount of 2 and 3 bedroom apartment style hotel units. So that's more comparable to a house or other vacation rentals. So in that market, we do lean more into the vacation rental comp sets. In Chicago, however, a lot more, it's urban, obviously a lot more hotels nearby that we can pull into our comp set. But same thing, we use the like neighborhood data tool, and we'll build a comp set of 15 to 20 similar Airbnb listings for like Superhost 4.5 stars or above. Click around the listings, make sure they look and feel like how our brand feels, and we trust them as like a true competitor. So we do both there. I do think, again, some of our Chicago hotels are a little bit bigger unit count, so they align more so with the hotel. But it's always good to know, because we get an Airbnb behind direct booking. Airbnb is our number one OTA. So we do have to be conscious of what's going on around us in terms of how many units there are, where they're priced at. So we do look at both. But I'd say in Chicago, we weigh a little more on hotel. In Michigan, we do a little bit more vacation. It's a really interesting question, and I always like thinking about it. I do think that this is the model of the future. One, in multitude of reasons. One, I think COVID exposed honestly how expensive it is to operate a traditional hotel too. Just the amount of staff that you have to have. So you've seen all these different technology brands emerge for this apartment style hotel, right? They realize you can legitimately convert an apartment building into a hotel if you get the right zoning and licensing. And if you are able to put, smart locks on the system or in the building and have a good system that's reliable, then really you need, cleaners and maintenance tech on site to operate it. You don't necessarily need a concierge. So I think limited service, we're already starting to see, even at the big brand traditional hotels, probably not getting housekeeping every day unless you ask for it. There's not as many bellhops and things like that. So I think, brands and operators are going to lean into a little bit more limited service and lean into technology. And I also think the consumer's changing a bit. Marriott's posted some really great market data on the younger generations and how they shop for hotels and what their experience is. And I think the older generation, business travelers, you got your Marriott or your Hilton, and that's who you're sticking to. But our generation likes to do more vacation, like searching, and whether it's VRBO, Airbnb, they're just like a little bit, it's a different search, and they like a lot more space, kitchen, whatever. And honestly, design. I think that's a big thing for people now, searching for that Instagram moment or whatever. A hotel could obviously get you that. But I think, a lot of the big brands are realizing that, they got to do something a little bit more in terms of catching your eye, design, amenities. And what we've started to see too is, yes, business travel is coming back, but also, remote work is definitely a thing for companies, but they want to have some kind of touch points in person. So our Michigan properties have really done well with corporate events, corporate retreats. So, once a quarter, once a year, some companies are looking to do offsites where they can all get together, have a meeting space, but then enjoy time just hanging out and getting to know each other, because they're not always in the office, or there's satellite offices throughout the country, and so they're like looking for these spaces to come together. Everybody's got their own room, but then you have these common spaces. So you're starting to see some of these other brands pop up too, where they're really like designing it specifically for corporate events or retreat, like wellness retreats, whether it's yoga, meditation, and they're doing extremely well. And there's a lot of pre-booking, and you can really develop a whole marketing funnel at these companies or these wellness leaders. So I think that's another interesting thing that's going to happen. Yes, like corporate apartment style hotels are going to happen in urban markets, but then you're starting to see in some of these more leisure vacation markets, these like intentional retreat hotel brands emerge. And I think it's really interesting, and it's only going to keep growing. There's only going to continue to be more and more tech brands playing into the space because it's still very new. That's what we're seeing in terms of when we talk to lenders and exit scenarios. There just haven't been a lot of transactions for these type of apartment style hotels, but I think in the next year or two you'll start to see some of those, and then it's going to be this whole kind of new asset class, which is really fascinating. You're like a new tech in the space and you're not leveraging AI. I mean, you gotta go back to the drawing board.